Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Nourisher Podcast. Okay, we have touched on Enneagrams on this podcast before. I am so excited for today's conversation because it completely embodied what I've wanted this entire podcast to feel like, and that is sitting down, chatting with a bestie over a glass of wine, or maybe a cozy cup of coffee if that's not your thing. But it didn't feel like we were recording a podcast. It just felt like a good conversation with a good friend. I sat down with Contessa, an incredible Enneagram and life coach based in New Jersey, who is helping people break through BS patterns that keep them stuck and uncover the deeper why behind who they are and how they show up in the world. Jackie and I have definitely become friends. We text, send voice memos, cheer each other on, and I just know that she is going to feel like a bestie to all of you. She is real, wise, and funny in all the best ways, and she just brings so much heart and joy and fun to this conversation. If you've ever wondered why you are the way you are, or if you're just curious about what the Enneagram can reveal about you, this one is for you. Hey, Jackie, welcome to the Nourisher Podcast.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm super excited because we connected over Instagram and you are definitely the furthest away location-wise that I've had on the podcast. So I'm super excited for you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and the work that you do.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much. And honestly, as soon as we connected, I started listening and I was like, And now I've been a listener, so I feel a little bit like intimidated to be on the other side of it. No, so I'm Jackie Contessa. I'm so excited to be here. I live in New Jersey. I'm a stone's throw away from Manhattan, so that's how much of an attitude I have. Love good bagels. I'm an Enneagram coach and a life coach, which basically means I use who you are to help you get exactly where you want to go and break up with BS patterns in your life that just are not serving you. And I love gifting my sessions back to single moms. So I'd love to tell you guys about that later too.
Oh, I love that. I was raised by a single mom for most of my life. And so, yeah, I'm excited to dive into that. I also love bagels, but I'm having to transition to gluten-free. So it's been a rough journey for me.
Twinning. Honestly, so living in New Jersey with the best bagels in Jersey and the best pizza in Manhattan, I was like, I am in deep yogurt. I cannot, I can't do this. But we cheat sometimes, you know.
It's worth it, really. The pain is worth it.
If you can, it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I would love to hear kind of how you got into this work, your personal story, and what led you to become this life and Enneagram coach.
Okay, so it's really funny because I don't want to say it kind of just happened. The Enneagram became a tool when I started coaching that was available to me. But in reality, I was also the kid that at the pool party was sitting, with the mom while she's cutting the watermelon and talking to her and listening to her and trying to help her sort things out. I've been doing it unprofessionally my whole life. So I did get to a point where I was actually working in finance and someone said to me, you should do this for a living. Are you a coach? So I was like, oh, I should. Okay. When I started coaching, I remember looking at my first client and thinking, she doesn't think these two areas are related in her life. She came in, I think her goal was that she wanted to make friends. She said, I don't have any friends. I want to make friends. And I said to her, why don't you have friends? And she was like, I don't have friends. I just don't have friends. And I as we kept talking, I started seeing the same pattern in her life in other places. And without giving too much away, I remember asking her, do you know why you do this? Do you know why you do this? Do you know why you do this? And I had already had the Enneagram language, and that's what I was using. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna ask her, can I use this tool on you? And she was like, yeah, sure, why not? And we did not actually work on her goal. We worked on her patterns that were hiding behind her type. And by the time we were done working together, she found herself in community before she knew it. And so it was one of those things where along the way, I think I was born to be a coach, but the Enneagram fell into my lap at a really wonderful time because my coaching philosophy is very much, I love you so much that I never want to work with you again. I want to set you up to set you free. Get out of here. I love you. Bye. Go. So the Enneagram to be honest, was a tool that was so sustainable that I could pass it on to people. I could teach them something they could never unknow about themselves. Like, I don't want to be that coach that just says, here's what you do. That's a helper. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to tell you, well, this is why you do this. Are you that person? No. Oh my God. Okay, cool. So let's figure out who you are, where you're going, what that person does. So you know how to get yourself the rest of the way there. You do. You just naturally know how to get yourself where you want to go. Sometimes we just need a little bit of help.
You said so many things in there that I want to dissect, but I really have questions about the whole personality-based coaching situation, because I know many of us, we get pulled into some of these gimmicks, and especially with the rise of social media, I feel like
everyone's a coach.
Everyone's a life coach, you know? And I like to tell my therapist, I learned from my quote unquote Instagram therapist, which is just these random quotes that you see. It's very hard to tell if it's necessary, what it actually is, how it looks when it actually works. So could you maybe define a little bit what personality-based coaching actually looks like in practice?
Yeah. So I can tell you what it looks like for me, right? So I have a friend in Australia, actually. She's a personality coach, and she uses something close to like MBTI or whatever. I'm not super familiar with that system, funny enough. So I don't know how everyone does it, but I know that we do some of the same types of things within the tools that we have. However, she's also come to me for coaching. So the Enneagram, in my opinion, is just like one of the best tools. But personality coaching, the way I do it is I picked a tool that doesn't tell us what we do or what to do. It tells us why we do what we do. And when we realize that some of those things are based in fears and not in truth, and we start to see things differently, we use those same patterns and impulses to do good things, right? So someone who, I'll go with my type. I'll get personal for a second. I used to be so incredibly manipulative. That was such a potty word for me. I hate it. I still hate it. But it's true. I mean, listen, if I wiggle my loose tooth to make it come out faster, I've manipulated it. So it's not about, being a terrible person, but I couldn't speak up and connect to what I needed. I was so scared to have needs because I was scared then people wouldn't need me. So I didn't connect to what I needed, but I still needed what I needed. So I manipulated people to get it. I didn't want to call it manipulation. I didn't. Now I don't need people to give me self-love because that's an inside job. So I don't need to manipulate any people, and I can meet my own needs. And now when I help people, it is that I get to be generous. Same helping ability, same love of nurture and care and alleviating people's pain. Completely different person on the inside, right? So I think it's one of those things where I don't want you to be a different person. I want you to be you. We're going to use so I use the terms assets and liabilities a lot. And a lot of times the things that we find the most frustrating in ourselves is really kind of like a muscle. You go to the gym and, it's just kind of atrophied. You lift 5 pounds, then you lift 10 pounds. Pretty soon you're lifting 50 pounds. Pretty soon you're lifting your own weight, right? So it's one of those things that grows with use. And that's one of the benefits of a system that is start to end how you can evolve, right? We can tell you what you look like in your worst, what's available to you in your worst, what's available to you in your best. So it's one of those things where if I'm using something about you that is never going to change, but you get to manage if you are in the green or in the red, right? If I get to give you those tools, I think that is the best way to set you up. Like, so for me, that felt like doing my clients justice. What's the bet? Like, if I really don't want to work with them again, how do I not set them up to fail? How do I, And so it's not just for me personality-based coaching, but specifically using the Enneagram to help you see the patterns, help you uncover what you need to do next. And that's why I do it. What people don't realize is super involved in there is we have personality patterns that affect life, love, work, thinking, feeling, behaving, finances, eating, shopping, spending, doing nothing, working really hard, not working really hard. And that's where the life coaching part comes in. But the Enneagram is that tool that gets me to see all of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. I got into the Enneagram through a coworker and a friend. And after she told me about it, I didn't do that deep of a dive. I just bullet points, but I mistyped myself. But then I remember I was using it almost as an explanation as to why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? And then tried to adjust my patterns and adjust the way that but again, I'm like, this is just who I am. I need to stop apologizing for it. And so I was really excited when you and I connected because we got to do, the introduction and the typing session. And I want to dive into that here in just a minute. But what do you feel like is the connection between our personality patterns and that self-sabotaging behavior?
The biggest thing, and this is what I think the Enneagram does for us, is I call it the big fat why. And every single Enneagram type, what's funny is you have people that like look like a type on the outside. So like I look like an 8, right? Not that I have an appearance of an 8, but like I'm very assertive. I will curse your ear off. And I get mad kind of fast. I'm very intense. So I look like an 8. I look like a challenger, but I'm a type 2. I'm the helper. And people paint them as like sweet little martyrs, Marthas, whatever. So I think one of the things that matters the most is why you do what you do. If anything's available to you from, you have cultural influence, you have family influence, you are more than just an Enneagram type, right? So you have you. Why you do what you do really matters. And then when you look at your why, what you're afraid of, what you're trying to protect, what you're trying to preserve, what really matters most, then you go, well, what would a person like me do to protect this? And that's like ding, 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 this behavior. So one of the things that I do is I boil it down to certain main traits that are sort of like personality characteristic, but it's a mix of like thoughts, feelings, behaviors. There's like 5 or 6 per Enneagram type that I do. And those are things that are a direct link to this big fat why, this core fear that they're trying to protect. And what happens is that sometimes the same reason that we don't want to commit to one relationship is the same exact reason we didn't want to leave the last job, which is the same reason we didn't want to start a new television show, which is the same reason we're binge eating. We don't realize what's connected. So we get frustrated and we go, I really need to stop procrastinating. And we isolate it and we get frustrated and the shoe doesn't fit and we blame the foot. So I think that while I love other personality stuff, I love Myers-Briggs and what it explains to some degree. Like I also love like the BuzzFeed personality quizzes. Those things are fun. Do you remember like way back when it was like, what rotini are you? Like those were fun.
Yeah, that was the best time to kill.
Literally nothing could go wrong. I was always rotini. This is so much more than that because it gets to the core. But I have to be very honest, there's a little bit of nakedness in there. I hate to tell you this, but we only scratched the surface when we did your typing session. I was like, I remember the entire time after going, man, I didn't even give her anything to think about. When I look at somebody's why, what they're protecting, what matters to them, what they're afraid of, it tells me all of the places they could go. And so I go, okay, is this where you go? I want you to know this is why you're going there. And they go, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. I never realized that if I didn't feel special, I would feel like people would forget me. I never realized it.
I know. It's almost like a form of therapy. And it is wild to me what happens, what kind of transformation happens in your life when you become self-aware. And of course, there's so many tools for us to be able to discover that self-awareness, but I love that you're doing it kind of in a different way than we've seen traditionally, because I don't think a lot of people apply the Enneagram and, therapy or self-awareness. And I really love that you're kind of marrying the two. It's just a really cool thing that you're doing.
Well, thank you. No, I think it's necessary. I think it's not, I like to say the phrase, eat the fish and spit out the bones. So if you're like, I don't know, I don't like systems, that's fine. If you hear something that resonates, just take that and work on that. You know what I mean? You don't have to marry one thing in particular. Like I'm using the Enneagram as a tool because it helps me help give you language about things that you may not have ever understood that you may experience without me. One of the things I love about Enneagram is I have lots of coach friends in my network and we love to build each other up because we all do completely different things. Some people do Enneagram and sobriety. Some people do, Enneagram and divorce, Enneagram and grief. Mandy Capehart is a wonderful Enneagram and grief expert if you know your Enneagram type and are struggling with any kind of grief. So people are doing some incredible things because the Enneagram tells us, when I tell you all the places we could go. When I first learned my type, like I'd mistyped a whole bunch. I took online tests. I poop on tests. I do not like them. They're not my favorite. But I kept mistyping. And when I finally figured out that I was a type 2, I was really devastated. I was depressed and hid it for a lot of people. But like, I felt such a huge piece of shit because it read me like a book. It was things that I had been trying to hide from myself. And then when I was ready, I was like, okay, I'm ready to face it. And I'll be very transparent with you just because I feel like from the episodes I listen to, I feel like a lot of independent, strong women listen to this podcast. And so I want to say it like this. I use the Enneagram for my growth because I didn't have a support system in ways that a lot of people traditionally might. I had friends and family for sure. But I couldn't be that kind of naked and transparent and vulnerable about so many things with the people I had in my life at that time. And, that was actually part of my Enneagram work, but the Enneagram was something I could do by myself. And thankfully, I've also worked with Enneagram coaches along the way and things like that. But it was a tool that I could use by myself to sustain myself and empower myself, especially when I wasn't sure who else I could lean on.
Yeah, for sure. I think it comes back to that self-awareness because not everyone around us, friends, family, or coworkers, whoever we surround ourselves with, they're not very self-aware themselves. And so then whenever you're relying on them for advice or you go to them and ask for their 2 cents, sometimes it's not helpful. So it's nice that you have that tool for yourself, but then, to have someone in your back pocket like you to kind of walk us alongside and a non-biased perspective. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I want to do a little bit of an overview of the Enneagrams.
Yeah. So I'll do a really quick overview of each of the 9 types. And I'm going to talk, listen, I'm Middle Eastern. I will talk really, 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 really fast, but I'll give you a lot of information. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll do a little overview and I'll wrap it in a bow with some of that big fat why. So I want you to know that you might resonate with what a type looks like, but it's really that core stuff, the why they do all this, why it matters to them. That's what you need to listen for. So I will start with type 1. So type 1s are often called the perfectionist or the reformer, right? So they care a lot about morality. They have an intense drive for order, doing things the right way. They're very principled. They have a very brutal inner voice that never shuts up. And while we all have a little commentator in there, they have that voice like almost 100% of their waking hours, holding them to like very, very high standards, right? They genuinely want to make the world a better place through action, through ideals, through making things better. And their core motivation, right, their big fat why is they want to be good. They want to be right. They want to have integrity. And they don't want to be corrupt or defective or imperfect, right? They want to be appropriate. They want to be right. Does that make sense?
So I remember when you and I had our conversation and I talked about mistypes because I used to think I was a 1. So I'm excited for everyone to kind of hear all of the types because you'll hear one and you'll be like, that's me. Oh, wait, no, that's me. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
And no, that's totally fine. And I will say this too. Your type in particular is one that I want to die on that hill because people get it really wrong. And there are a few types that pretty much look like every other type. So it's like one of those things where you're like, then there are mistypes, there are subtypes. There's so much involved. That's why we don't like those tests. But I digress,
Yes.
So this is type 2, the helper or the giver, sometimes called the lover, and I'm going to coin that because that's me. This is my type. So they are really, really warm. They have a lot of giving energy. They are helpers. They live for relationships, right? They're really relationally oriented, but sometimes to their own detriment, right? So they need appreciation for what they do. They neglect themselves in the process. And I hate saying that, but we have a deep fear of rejection that tells us we have to overextend and earn love from other people. And that means endless service. That means self-sacrifice, right? So our big fat why, that core motivation is that we want to feel loved and wanted as ourselves, but we don't really give ourselves a chance to get there because we just want to help our way through. And our core fear is that we are going to be unwanted, ultimately that we're unlovable and kind of just being tolerated. They could be very, very generous people, but because they don't meet their own needs, they're really struggling with just overextending themselves for other people.
I know quite a few type 2s, or at least they think they're type 2s in my life. And yeah, that sounds spot on.
Yeah. So type 3s are called achievers or performers. And I say performer and they don't like it because they're like, I just want to be an achiever. But we have to be honest. If we think achiever, we're only going to have this corporate mentality of 3s. And that's why people get mistyped a lot. All 3s are very ambitious. They're very driven. They're focused on success. But what I need you to know is that success is very relative. They want to be what is valuable and admirable and successful to whatever relative environment is important to them. Sometimes that makes them really work hard. Sometimes that makes them want to have the picture perfect family. Sometimes that is through self-improvement. But whatever it is, they shapeshift to present a successful image. And sometimes they lose themselves in the process because their big fat why, their core motivation is that they want to be valuable. They want to be worthy. And their fear is being worthless. So they're like, I don't feel like I have a lot of worth outside of what I do. And then they do so much that they forget who they are. And they are incredible go-getters. But sometimes we think that this just really applies to like being a CEO or something. And in reality, it's that there are so many people who are struggling with disidentifying from their true authentic self for a successful exterior.
I can relate to that so much because I feel like in the last 2 years, after my divorce, I feel like I went on this whole self-discovery journey and trying to figure out who I was because I was living this life for so long where I felt like I had to do the things. I had to live the life. I had to be the successful, corporate girly. And that just didn't feel like me. And I feel like now I've come into that place where I know myself and where I'm living an authentic life. And it's just absolutely freeing. And so I'm really glad that we touched on that and kind of their core fears and things like that.
Yeah. And that was so lovely. And I appreciate that you trusted me with that stuff because it's hard. Like I almost wanted to throw up talking about my own type. You know what I mean? So some of these things are hard to hear, but I love every single one of these Enneagram types. I see all of these things as neutral. I just want to know, like when I'm telling you right now, shame off you. I just want to know if this stuff applies to you. That's all. It's not bad. It's a muscle that's saying, I want you to work me out in the other direction. I want you to work me out. So yes, before I go on a tangent, let's go to type 4. So type 4s are called individualists or the creative artists. And I will say this, sometimes I say tortured artists and everyone who's not a 4 comes down my throat and goes, don't say that about them. And then the 4s DM me and they go, thank you. I really like that one. So 4s are emotional deep divers. They're introspectives. They are obsessed with authenticity and uniqueness, right? They do want to belong. They have a deep need to belong, but within belonging, they want to stand out. So they see everything through an emotional filter. They're always they spend a lot more time trying to find their authentic identity instead of really truly being themselves, but they're just amazingly attuned to beauty, to depth, right? And then sometimes that means they push into and amplify their melancholic tendencies and focus on their flaws a little bit too much. But their core motivation is to find their unique identity and to have some kind of personal significance, right? They want to leave their mark, but their core fear is being emotionally cut off and having no identity or personal significance. And for them, what they do with that is they just push into their emotions and their feelings. But what I want to tell them, because if you're a 4, you can hear it. I can feel it in my gut because it's one of those things where if you know, your capacity to have a very, very deep depth of feeling does not include dwelling in it. That means moving through it. So type 5s are called investigators or observers. I like theorists. That's my favorite nickname for them. They're intellectual explorers. They live in their minds, right? They have an insatiable hunger for knowledge, data, information, personal space, privacy, autonomy, right? So for them, a lot of things, it costs a lot. It costs a lot of energy, a lot of stops in life, a lot of stops in the day, a lot of mental, emotional stops drain them way more than a different person. And so for them, it's safer to observe life at a distance, to process everything, to do everything in the mind because mental stuff takes up less energy than feelings, right? So these are experts, they're deep divers, right? But their core motivation, they want to be capable, they want to be competent, they want to be masters and experts of what they're doing. They want to be real, they want to know stuff. But they're afraid of two different things. Number one, they're afraid of being incompetent. They don't want to be uninformed, incompetent. They don't want to have friction with the world. They want to know what they need to know to make it out there, and they want to be competent. But the other side is that they don't want to be depleted. They're terrified of being depleted and being left with absolutely nothing. And so they're like, how do I stock up on my resources? And they just default to knowledge. And they have a little bit more of a distance between engaging directly socially, and sometimes they'll sub knowledge for those social engagements. But it's really important to know that fives are actually really, really creative. They're very sensitive, which is why they try not to feel their emotions, because they're sensitive.
That's so interesting. I feel like 5, 6, and 7, I probably know the least about. So yeah. I love that you kind of touched on their social cues as well.
That's a funny thing for fives. They don't like to hear it, but fives sort of people please by like being that person that offers information. Here, yeah, I know this, the best car for you to get at this price. I know, the best coffee shop in this area. And for them, that's their form of social engagement, because people are like, oh, be more social, be more like us. They don't have the same battery, babe. They don't have the same battery as you. It's not fair.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Okay, let's hit on number 6.
Okay, type 6. So they are called the loyalist or the guardian. So they are, I think, probably one of the most misunderstood types on the Enneagram, because it's just kind of labeled like the scaredy cat type, the anxious type. And if you look at the memes, I think it's sort of like a funny, niche way to sum it up. But they are just very concerned with safety and support. They want support and safety from trusted sources. So they show a lot of loyalty to people they trust, and they want a lot of loyalty from people they trust. They also show a lot of skepticism, right? So they are very vigilant planners. They're always scanning for potential dangers. Please don't confuse this with somebody who can be an anxious person. Anxiety is human, right? But this is a person who is always thinking about contingencies, about what could happen, worst case scenarios of what they could go wrong, so they could plan for it and solve it. Okay, so their core motivation is to have security, to have support, and their core fear is being without guidance, without support, being abandoned. Their biggest thing that they don't realize, and what we don't talk about, is a lot of times they're projecting these threats and saying they're coming from the outside. They're coming from the outside. They don't realize that they're anxious a lot of the time. What they have to do is tell their what if. Yeah, what if? I trust myself. A lot of times they try to put the trust and the loyalty that they're looking for, that onus, on other people, but it comes from inside them. Self-trust goes a long way. So.
Oh, that's powerful. I love that you said scaredy cat, because I feel like when I think of type 6, I think of doomsday thinkers.
Yeah.
And preparing for the worst.
And that's the thing, right? Like I will say this, and I say it with pride and with love. Like I think a 6 in it, any subtype, any variation, is like the human version of an underground bunker in their own way. Whatever they think is the most, let's say, insecure or untrustable, they are the most prepared for. And I think it's beautiful. I really, really do. I think they take care of themselves. I don't think it's an issue to make sure you're prepared for something that you are actually scared of happening. What you have to do then is go, I am as prepared as I can be. You trust yourself for the rest. But what 6s do is they take those contingencies and they go, what if, what if? This also puts them in a funny cycle with people, right? If people don't agree with them, they don't see things the same way, they don't see the same threat, because 6s, the anxiety is coming from in them, and then they get upset if other people may not see the same threat, and then they go, I don't know if I can trust this person. So they do a little bit of a funny dance with loyalty too.
I feel like that's so different from what we're about to talk about with type 7. I mean, again, I'm going based off of stereotypes, but yeah, let's talk about type 7.
So what's funny is that 7s are called the enthusiasts, the optimists. They are enthusiasm personified. And there are bright side 7s, there are moody 7s, but let me be very straight. They have anxiety just like type 6s use anxiety to stay away from fear. 7s have anxiety too. They just do different things with it. They put it into fun things. So there's the way that we phrase it is Sevens stay in a pattern of activity and anticipation of activity. So while they're in their activity, they're anticipating what could come next because their core fear is being trapped in negative emotions. So they actively avoid anything that is uncomfortable. Sometimes that means reality. Sometimes that means just getting distracted, right? And they're known for a need to avoid their own pain because they feel that their pain is a trapdoor to something deeper. But they take that and they go, well, I'm just going to be future oriented and opportunistic and find what's next and do what's next. And that's the thing. Their core motivation is that they want to be satisfied, content. They want to have their needs met. They want to have their needs fulfilled. But they're afraid of being deprived. They're afraid of being trapped in pain. And so they just go, okay, this is not it. It's in what's next. And what's next is going to do it. And they keep going and they keep going. And that's the thing. Like we love sevens. They are such joy magnets, right? But they would absolutely savor joy way more and way differently if they made a little bit more space for pain.
I love that you're kind of breaking down these stereotypes that we all know on Pinterest. And so now I'm excited to kind of talk about 8, because please give me some redeeming qualities about type 8, because we kind of just see them as the assholes. Sorry, but they're aggressive.
I hear what you're saying. And I first of all, I want to validate like anybody who's been hurt by an 8. I have been assassinated by a type 6. People can do ugly things when they're fearing their worst. And sometimes I will say, like, 8s are called challengers. They're called protectors. They are raw power. They are assertive. They're positive, protective forces. They command attention. Their confidence is felt. Like, no is a complete sentence. They are unmesswithable. I don't want to say the F word. They value autonomy and respect above all. So when they come forward direct and they stomp on the ice in front of you and you don't move and you hold your own, even if you said something different than they did, they respect you because they know that you can stand on your own. They can become confrontational and intimidating, but it's when they sense injustice. It's when they sense that they're being challenged. And sometimes that means that they feel like they're being threatened. And they puff up and they get bigger because for them, they want to be strong and in control of their own life. They want to be autonomous and self-sufficient. And their core fear, and if to be honest, if I had this filter walking through life, I might feel the same, right? My core fear is I'm always on the lookout for being harmed, controlled, violated by other people, and at the mercy of injustice. And holy smokes, there's injustice everywhere. And so for them, they are constantly like, I can't be vulnerable because that is a big effing neon sign above my head that says, come get this one. And so I have to be armored up because I have all these people that I love and I can't let this stuff get them either, but I also can't let them fully see me. So what I have to do is I'm just going to give my protection in exchange for a relationship, right? So it's one of those things where I feel like what we don't realize is like 8s are like the big guy named Tiny in the movie, like the gentlest people that are the most armored because it costs them so much to be open and people don't realize it. And I'm a little protective of them because 8 is my stress type. So when I get stressed, when every type gets stressed, we borrow inspiration from another type. We don't become them, but we just start to act like them, right? And I have complex PTSD. And so from a very young age, I really reached into my stress type very, very quickly. And I can feel a lot of that same need to puff up because there's something to protect. What we don't realize is like, we're like, oh, this 8's like fighting with me, they're so difficult. They can feel that you're asking them to be vulnerable and it feels really scary. And if you stay and you fight with them, they don't think it's a threat. They think that's you staying.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm glad that you kind of did an internal dive there because now I feel so much more empathy for them and maybe have a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, so type 9. Type 9s are called peacemakers, sometimes mediators, sometimes referees. And I know we hear a lot of hubbubaloo about how they will do almost anything to avoid conflict. And I think that's such a funny word because conflict is not always just fighting. Conflict is internal, it's tension. Conflict is disconnection to them. That is what they are ultimately trying to avoid, disconnection. They live life easygoing and connected to other people. They don't want to be fragmented. They don't want to be disconnected. They don't want that tension. They want harmony. So they naturally adapt to what other people want in pursuit of inner calm and outer calm. And they think to themselves, okay, the thing I can do to keep the most harmony out there, which keeps my connection, which keeps harmony in here, is to dim my light, minimize my desires, change my preferences, lose my self-awareness, right? Sacrifice my needs and go along to get along with other people, because their core motive is inner stability and peace of mind. And sometimes it's too hard to stand on their own in such a conflict-filled world, right? Where life is just coming at them, that they can stabilize by connecting with other people, by harmonizing with other people. But they get lost in that instead because they don't want loss, separation, fragmentation, and they'll do anything to keep relationship and connection. It's really hard because they're incredibly persistent people, right? Stubborn is a really funny word to use here, but I use it in a healthy way. Like, they're stubborn, they're persistent. But then when you lose connection with yourself and with your inner desires, you've got no leg to stand on. So sometimes they push their anger down. They kind of disconnect from it altogether because anger would move them into action, and they just go along to get along, and they keep the peace with other people.
Okay, I want to go back to something you said when we were talking about Enneagram 8, when you said that we borrow traits or certain things from different types. And I know for me, and a lot of people out there, we take these online tests. Most of the time we're looking for the free test. And so they may not ask us the right questions. And there might be people listening who are like, okay, I have characteristics of a type 3, but I also have characteristics of a type 7. And so how do you help people find their true Enneagram type?
So one of the things I will say is I do typing sessions with people, and they are 2 hours long, and that is whether you know your type or whether you don't. So, but that 2-hour mark starts once or if you know your type. So before then, I do meet with people, and we take a very long time to actually suss out their type. Sometimes it takes literally 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes 2-3 hours. If you're looking for type specifics, right, there are so many things that those two types have in common, right? They're both assertive types, which means that when they have a need, they just go and they get it. But there are things that they do differently. 7s are optimistic types, which means optimism is how they deal with conflict, while 3s are optimistic in personality and exterior as well, but how they deal with conflict is actually being logical. So it's funny because there are some differences, and we go through different scenarios. I ask a lot of really specific questions. I also go through subtypes. Subtypes are very important to me. So I've talked about the big fat why, but then I'm like, well, how do you do your why? To go to your type, right? To go to type 3, there is one subtype of 3 that is like the corporate 3. Self-preservation 3s don't quite look like 3s. Sexual 3s, they care about having an image, but they want that image to be of a helpful person. It's like, I don't look like 2s. It's a little bit to weed that stuff out, which is why when you take an online test and they ask you, I think a lot about what might go wrong. Well, how do you answer that? Like, yeah, probably, I guess more often than I don't. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where if I'm going between a 3 and a 7, I'm looking at the core motives, right? And they might go, oh, both of those core motives, both of those things sound scary to me. Both failure and being trapped in emotional pain sound really scary. Okay, well, let's talk about why we are doing certain behaviors. What are some of these behaviors we're doing? Why are we doing them? Let's unpack. Let's unpack each subtype. Let's unpack this how. Let's unpack these patterns of behavior. And we're going side by side. Ultimately, what we have to accept is that on the outside, we could look like another type. I'll be honest, there are sometimes I feel like an 8. And I really do. There are sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a bull in a china shop kind of person. But those are not my motives. I'm a lover girl through and through. I'm so soft on the inside and the outside. It's really about being able to be honest with yourself about what is a root and what is a fruit. Because maybe because you want to be successful, dealing with your pain sounds terrifying. That would be a 3. Sometimes it's not necessarily about what's important to you and what applies to you, but why. And that's why having somebody who knows how to ask these questions, like one of the things that I do is I'm like a certified bounty hunter for patterns. I can sniff these things out. I can sniff the similarities out because I'm trained to hear that stuff.
Sure. And I love that you were talking more about your type is your why, but your subtype is how. I used to work with a girl that she and I are both threes, but we're very different. And we had another coworker who, according to the not so accurate test, was also a 3. And we're like, how does that even work? So when we kind of talked more about the subtypes, I thought that makes so much sense. I would encourage everybody to do a typing session because it just opened my eyes to so many things. And then I really appreciated you just asking questions. You asked a question where it showed commonalities and similarities between 2 different types, or the type I thought I was and the type that I probably am. And then you broke it down into, okay, but how do you handle this situation? And then it guided us further down that road of, okay, you're a type 3.
Sometimes we have to just really pick it apart, but you know yourself best. And so it's not me telling you what you are, right? I'm never telling somebody what they are. I'm guiding them because I can only bring the knowledge, but you're bringing your story. You can type yourself. I'm facilitating that, And so it's like you typed yourself as a sexual 3 with a 2-wing. Because that's who you are.
Gosh, I feel like we could talk about this for hours. I mean, we literally talked for 2 hours. We could do part 1, part 5, part 17. I just feel like we could dive into each Enneagram type and I would be so invested in each conversation.
Well, I think one of the things that's like so cool about the Enneagram is it's kind of like the end from the beginning, but it tells you the end in the best way possible. Like one of the things that we don't get to often hear on podcasts, there are so many beautiful things when each type is at their healthiest. Like those 8s, when they balance softness and strength, when they realize softness is not going to take them out, it's not an Achilles heel, and they're vulnerable, they will fight for the underdog. They are protective of everybody. They make things happen. They move the needle. They make an impact, right? So those things that we are, not so fancy on, those things that we heard that were like, those are atrophied muscles. And so it's like one of those things where we can see the end. We go, oh, that's who I'm supposed to be. I knew it. I knew I wasn't supposed to be stuck. I freaking knew it. I knew there was more to me. And the Enneagram goes, exactly. And then a coach goes, here's the middle. And I think that's like the beauty of being able to work with somebody who like can facilitate that stuff. If you're a person that does really well with self-study, and I mean can do years of self-study, you don't need a coach. You know what I mean? Like you don't need a coach. But there are people who have these patterns and they don't realize they're all connected to the same 3 things. The same 3 things that they're running from. Disconnection, fragmentation, conflict. Why are you procrastinating? Disconnection, fragmentation, conflict. Why are you avoiding? How come you never have an opinion? Why are you overeating? Why are you overcompensating? Why are you overdrinking? Disconnection, fragmentation, conflict.
Gosh, that's powerful.
Yeah, it really matters. And it's scary, but it's important,
Oh, for sure. So I want to take a look at how you move from finding our type and then how that process looks in helping us move from being stuck in our bullshit patterns, like you say, and then moving into intentional action.
So that changes type by type, but essentially what it is, I said this earlier, but I'm going to eat the fish, spit out the bones kind of gal. So I'm going to assume that when you come in, not every single thing is going to, let's say, fit you for type 1, right? You go, I'm less of a perfectionist and more like a justice junkie. And I'm like, okay, so certain things are going to apply more than others, but these other things might be available. Okay. And then we're going to go, where does this apply? Oh, I don't really think I correct others. I don't think I do. Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Do you get frustrated when you create a schedule or a standard in your head and other people don't follow? Oh, yeah, I do. So it's like I have some language for what that is, and then I start to ask you questions that say, well, how could this show up in your life? Is it possible? If it's available to you that you might go here, could this be here? And then sometimes the answer is no. But when the answer is yes, I do realize I do that. And I do it specifically when I'm stressed, or I actually specifically only do this with my husband because of this. Okay. Like, oh, I do this as a parent. Okay. Or yeah, I do that all the damn time. Perfect. that, like, for me, that's like a breath of fresh air. These things don't scare me, so it's like, you're allowed to be scared and hold on for dear life. These things don't scare me because they're drawing me a map. Because for me, I know exactly where that thing is coming from, what you're trying to protect, what you're trying to avoid, what you really want out of life, where you're trying to get, and why you think these behaviors and thoughts and feelings are going to get you there. I know exactly what needs to get flipped on its head. So you bring me your story, and, excuse my French, but if you put your whole ass into it, I will flip all of these things on their head with you to show you this is who you are. This is how you handle life. This is what it looks like when you you decide, I'm not going to be passive aggressive. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to keep my opinion to myself so much that my anger turns into resentment. I'm just going to be honest and brave feeling maybe like a bad person for it. It starts becoming available slowly to do things differently than we've ever done. And that's what I tell people a lot. I'm like, when you need to make a change in your life and you want to work with a coach or you want to use the Enneagram, you don't actually need to even know what's wrong. You don't even need to know what you need to do. You just have to know that something you're doing is not working and that you're willing to do something different. And so when we look at what is actually happening and how it might be happening in your language, I have Enneagram language. I'll be like, to 8s, I'll be like, do you have a pattern of insensitivity? And they'll go, I don't know. I'm not trying to hurt people. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I believe you. That's not what I'm asking. Insensitivity is a reflection of, we dismiss our own emotions, so we dismiss other people's emotions. Do you feel like that applies? Yeah, actually it does. Okay, let's get into that. And then we start to discuss, well, you're not necessarily insensitive on purpose. You're protecting your own emotions from something. Why am I protecting my emotions? What am I trying not to be vulnerable to? What are we starting to flip on its head? It takes a lot of time, right? It's little by little, but it's all at once. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, my coaching style is that I'll put my hands basically everywhere but up your butt. Like, that's, but it's one of those things where I just don't want you tripping over the same traps over and over. In the beginning years of my coaching, I heard so much of the variation of like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more to life. Like, this can't be it. That was like the thing that I kept hearing from my clients. And I was just like, big homies, the more is you. The more is you. And it doesn't seem that way because it seems like we're doing something wrong. We're just doing all we know, but we can do different.
I feel like just opening up and having that initial conversation and willingness for self-discovery and self-awareness opens up so many doors, but to have someone walk alongside you through that process just feels like a breath of fresh air, Because like we talked about in the beginning, I just feel like when you start to walk down this path, you don't always have people with you. And so I really love that you can be that person for people and that you're helping them identify their patterns and maybe why they have those patterns and how that displays to themselves or to other people. So I just feel like the work that you're doing is so incredible, and I am so intrigued and very excited for everybody else to learn more about it.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You're so sweet.
Of course. Well, okay. So I want to know if you have any top tips for listeners to maybe begin reconnecting to their purpose. What steps would you have them take today as they leave the podcast?
Ask yourself why. That's all. That's all. That's all. Right? It's private. It's vulnerable. You can keep it in your head. It's between you and yourself. You don't have to tell anybody, but ask yourself why. When you do something that you go, again, ask yourself why. When you feel something, when somebody gives you a micro look, ask yourself why. When someone doesn't react the way that you wanted them to, ask yourself why it mattered. Whatever is happening for you in your own skin that causes, I call it a toleration, but a combination of feelings of like frustration, resentment, anger, things we're just putting up with, things that are just like, again, a drain, a leak in my life, like anything like that. Ask yourself why. We're so cognizant that it happens. We're cognizant of how it feels, how it affects us, but we don't necessarily always go, why does this matter to me? Why is this impacting me? Start there. That's one thing. And often when we start thinking about things and we open the door to thinking about things, sometimes it becomes really available to us what to do next. We trust ourselves to get ourselves there. We also trust ourselves to hide things from ourselves. So once you start to unhide stuff from yourself, you'll be surprised what comes pouring out.
Okay, so to kind of wrap everything up, I ask everybody on the podcast 2 questions, and I'm really excited to hear your answers, actually.
Okay.
So the first one is, what is one thing that people may not know about you?
Oh, one thing that people might not know about me is that I'm a high school dropout. Yeah, I'm a high school dropout. People are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I dropped out of high school. The thing that I get the most often is, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, how often did you expect high school to come up? We're 30. Like,
for real.
A decade and a half ago, buddy.
But also it just feels so irrelevant, right? Like, I even think college, with the way the world is now, sometimes where did you go to college, what's your degree, and all that, it doesn't matter.
It's mattering less and less. And that's the thing. Like, I think it's starting to matter where it needs to matter, right? Where there do need to be procedural things that need to happen and boards that need to oversee certain things.
Sure.
And some people just don't. Some people just don't need it to do brilliant things.
Right. But what a flex for you, because I'm sure people underestimate you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If they knew going into an interview, aside from anything else about you, that you dropped out of high school, they're going to automatically have all of these preconceived notions about you and this perception. And then you walk into a room and they're like, oh my gosh, she's a badass.
True. It's true.
So yeah, what a great tool. How old were you when you dropped out?
I was a junior. I had just started my junior year, and I dropped out. And then the dean of my college, I got my GED. I ended up getting my GED and went to college. And the dean of my college told my advisor, she's not going to graduate. Don't get her hopes up. And my advisor was like, I'll get fired if you tell anybody I showed you this email. But look at this. And I went into my stress number. I pulled from type 8, and I was like, my ass, I'm not graduating. I'm going to do it just to spite you.
And 17, gosh, all the things that are happening in your life at 17. Yeah. You're just a ball of emotions. Well, thank you for sharing that. The second question is, who are 3 women who inspire you?
Ooh. My grandma is number 1. Taylor Swift is number 2. I'm so sorry. Everyone's like, it's so cringy. Taylor Swift is number 2. I honestly think that she's amazing. So
you're not the first one to say Taylor Swift, so don't even apologize.
She was like, that's my music. I'm just re-recording it. Screw you. Miss Queen. Yeah. Okay. So my grandma, Taylor Swift, and I have to say one of my aunts. I'm sorry. I was going to say, don't say a second family member, but I have to say one of my aunts, because she is one of the most generous, like truly generous people I've ever met. Like, no agenda, just straight generosity and love and kindness and hope. She has so much of it for herself that it radiates off her for other people. And so I'm very inspired by being that full of self-love that people just, get it from being around you,
Yeah, I feel like everybody doesn't want to say they're family members because it sounds so cliche, but we know them, right? We know them, we see their heart. We know so much about who they are as people and the way that they've inspired us. And I love when people throw in celebrities or, public figures, political figures. I love when people throw those in there because that's very real also. But I love cliche answers. So your list was amazing.
Thanks. I'm a 2, so I'm very relationally oriented. So that's how it goes. And I feel like I'm related to Taylor Swift. She's my sister in my heart. So
okay. So have you been to the Eras tour? Did you do that?
I didn't. I couldn't even. I'm such a ball of emotion. First of all, I couldn't. I just didn't want to justify it. I was like, it's okay. But then when it came out on Disney Plus, and I watched like a few seconds of it, I burst into tears at the opening. My husband was like, "No, babe." And he's a Taylor Swift fan. He's he'll do it with me. He'll do, he's like, babe. And I was like,
I'm just so happy for her.
It's been a long time coming. Anyway, so.
I'm also not willing to sell my left kidney for a ticket to the tour.
No, ma'am. Like that's the thing. Like, I love her and I'll support her with lots and lots of Spotify streams. That's what I got. We can only do what's available to us. I'm healing being a people pleaser. You know what I mean?
Listen, you're showing up for her. She feels it.
You're welcome, Tay Tay.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I feel like we could talk for hours, and I'm so excited because I kind of feel like we're friends now.
Yeah. Oh, you can't get rid of me. You're not getting rid of me. Yeah.
I told my husband the other day, I was like, I have a friend in New Jersey, and he just goes, what? How did you meet this person in New Jersey? And I was like, well, through Instagram, but we're still friends.
Also, I just wanted to remind you that of your future fun fact and anecdote and everything is that your name means multiple cups of tea. I was thinking about it this morning. So in Turkish, to all of your listeners, Kayla's name would read like çaylar, which is a couple little cups of tea in Turkish. And so I think that's a really cute fact. I refrained from saying your name the entire time because I was so scared that I would call you çaylar.
Chylar. I love that. It's better than like Sky. I get Kyler all the time. So Chylar, I'll take that.
Çaylar.
I will be many cups of tea. Thank you.
Anyway, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where to find you, where to follow you. If they're interested in doing a typing session, how do they get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. I'm at Table4 9Co. That's FOR and the digit 9. I'm also at JackieContessa.com. If you're interested in doing a typing session, let me know. You can also do a 30-minute consultation with me. It's 30 minutes free. So I like people to come in and vet me and make sure they feel really good about the time and financial investment they're making in themselves. And every time I do a typing session with somebody, I gift one back to a single mom who's on my wait list. So if you are a single mom and you want to sign up for that, please go on to my website and sign up for that as well.
Ugh, you're amazing. You're just so awesome.
You too.
Okay, Jackie. Thank you so much. Mwah.
Mwah. Bye.
Okay, what an awesome conversation. I hope you loved hearing from Jackie as much as I loved having her on. She just brings so much honesty and depth and truly bestie energy. And I just hope something that she said gave you a little spark of clarity, courage, or maybe even curiosity about your own Enneagram type. If this episode resonated with you, please be sure to share it with someone who might need it or who also loves Enneagrams. Leave us a review, let us know your favorite takeaway, and of course, tag us on social media. This would be the perfect time to sign up for our newsletter because I am going to include information about Jackie's typing sessions and how to find out more about her and her work. And hey, if you haven't already, please go check out the Nourisher Podcast merch. All of these pieces were just created with so much intention. I cannot wait to get them out to the community. And it's just designed to remind you of the strength, beauty, and growth that you carry with you every single day. You can find those pieces when you sign up for our newsletter or on our social media. What better way to support the podcast than wearing it on your body? Okay, guys. Well, that's it. And until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and keep growing.